Hello everybody, and welcome to video number 4 of the Guide to Start Coding playlist. As I mentioned before, whatever type of programming you select to tell the CPU what to do for communication with other computers, you need to have a better understanding of Internet. Internet is a global collection of connected computers, and each computer has its own name and its own address. After they call, ping, and find the proper computer to communicate in this collection, they need to agree on a set of rules that enable them to talk to each other. This is not an easy task, and when you browse through internet, there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes. Today, I'm so excited to talk about HTTP. It stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's a communication protocol in the internet. It will standardize how the client and server communicate with each other. In fact, it functions a request-response protocol in the client-server model. Let's look at web browsing. First, you open a web browser. It's the app you use to access the web pages. Next, you type in the web address or URL of a website you want to visit. So in that moment, your computer is a client and starts talking to another computer called the server. That's usually thousands of miles away. In milliseconds, your computer asks the server for a website, and that server starts to talk back to your computer in a language called HTTP. The client submits an HTTP request message to the server. The server returns a response message to the client and provides resources you asked. You can think of HTTP as the language that one computer uses to ask another computer for a document. A typical HTTP request contains HTTP version type, URL, method, headers, and body. The method attached to it indicates the action that the request expects from the server. Two of the most common HTTP methods are GET and POST. A GET request is used when you want to get and fetch some information back in return, usually in the form of a website. So every time you're visiting a web page, you're mainly making a GET request to load all HTML code of that web page. I will talk about HTML in the next episode, but for now you can think of it as the language you use to tell a browser how to make a page look. The text of a web page is included directly in HTML, but other parts like videos or images are separate files with their own URL that need to be requested. The browser sends separate HTTP requests for each of these and displays them as they arrive. If a web page has a lot of different images, each of them cause a separate HTTP request, and the page loads slower. In web browsing, you're not just requesting pages and fetch information with GET request. Sometimes you send information. A POST request indicates that the client is submitting information to the web server. In fact, you're gonna add something to the server. So if you're creating a blog post, type a search query, or fill out a form including username and password, that's gonna be a POST request. Your browser sends this information in plain text to the web server using HTTP POST request. Okay, let's have a look to HTTP response. It's what clients receive from the server. These responses communicate valuable information based on what was asked for in the HTTP request. A typical HTTP response contains HTTP status code, headers, and body. Status codes are 3-digit codes most often used to indicate whether the request has been successfully completed. They are broken into 5 blocks. The code starting with the number 2 indicate a success. For example, after a client requests a web page, the most commonly seen responses have a status code of 200 OK, indicating that the request was properly completed. If the response starts with a 4 or a 5, that means there was an error and the web page will not be displayed. A code that begins with a 4 indicates a client-side error. It's very common to encounter a 404 not found when you're making a typo in a URL. A code beginning in 5 means everything seems okay as far as what you send to the server, but you still get an error. Something went wrong on the server side. Status codes can also begin with a 1 or a 3, which respectively indicate an informational response and a redirect. Alright, so now I'm gonna jump into some examples on dealing with the HTTP request and response. Let me first show you an example on an actual website. I'm just gonna use my YouTube channel, but you can go to any website you want. And then go to the Dev Tools. I'm using Brave browser. It's built on the Chromium web core. So to open a Dev Tools, I right-click and choose Inspect Element. And then click on the Network tab, and if I reload the page here, it's gonna make all the requests again and show them down here. So you can see a bunch of information including the status of 200, which means everything's okay. If I go ahead and choose this doc file, under response, you're gonna see the body, which is of course HTML file. And headers, there is 3 parts that in general you can find the request method get and status code 200. We get a little green dot as well. There is a bunch of stuff here that I'm not gonna explain. Some of them I don't even understand, but we have, like the URL, date, what else? Content type. I just want you to take note of these values after learned about HTTP protocol. If you want to narrow it down by files, you can see like all the CSS, doc, image, and other files that was loaded, including the content type. What happened if I made a typo in my URL? As you see, the code changes to 404, which means it's a client error. Alright, let's jump into Postman. There are many tools available for generating HTTP requests, but I will focus on Postman. Postman is a tool for simulating HTTP requests. It's a complete toolchain for API development. You can get it at getpostman.com. It's open source on Mac, Windows, and Linux. After installing and opening Postman, you'll have an option to create a new workspace. As you can see, I can make any type of request here to any URL. I'm gonna make sure it's a GET request, just like the browser made, and I'll get the same exact thing. It shows all the HTML, status code, load time, and the size. We can make any request from here that we can make in the browser and more than browser, of course. This is a fantastic tool for testing APIs that you'll build in future. In the next video, as I promised earlier, we'll talk about the HTML. Every web page that you've ever visited in your browser has some HTML associated with it. So stay tuned. If you guys found this video helpful, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe the channel. If you have any question, please make sure to comment below and I'll try to answer it as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.